Joining us for this segment and to discuss the planned stimulus package is Taiwo Oyedele, who is Fiscal Policy Planner and West Africa Tax Leader at PwC. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. It would seem like the whole world is drastically and variously adjusting to COVID-19, especially economically, because life is not going to end simply because we have a pandemic on our hands. In Nigeria, one of the ways that we're dealing with it is this House of Representatives Economic Stimulus Bill. First of all, give us your first impression when you heard about it, and how much life do you think it promises?
Thank you very much. Yeah, you're right. This is a pandemic that nobody had planned for. There was no scenario at any point in time that had envisaged something of this scale and magnitude. So we're all just trying to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. When I heard about the stimulus bill by the House of Representatives, my first impression was, wow, this is great, because it means that as a country, our lawmakers are stepping up their game to try and respond very quickly to an issue that is important to us as a country and as a people. But then, unfortunately, by reading the content of the bill, I was easily and quickly disappointed because, in my view, it does not address the issues, and I do not think it would actually make any impact whatsoever.
So now that you have, having gone through the bill a second time, the question then is, what are the missing elements as far as you are concerned? Because, or is it because it seemed it was hurriedly come up with, or you think there are some things that should have been put in it ab initio?
Yeah, I think in terms of the speed by which it was passed into law itself is not a problem. We know countries like Denmark where they are passing laws in a day. So that in itself is not a problem, because at this time you actually need the speed. We don't have the luxury of time to spend weeks and months trying to enact a law. So the speed wasn't the problem. If you think about the content of the bill, so the objectives were, one, to try and provide palliative to Nigerians and to companies. Two is to protect employment. And three is to grant relief for mortgage repayment. And then generally to just make it easier for Nigerians to go through this period. So the objectives are good in a way. But then when you look at the details of how these objectives will be applied, the first one is job protection. So that bill says that if you can keep your employees as an employer from the number of employees you had as at 1st of March 2020 until the end of the year, 31st December 2020, you will get 50% of the PAYE you pay on those salaries back as rebates. Now, what does that even mean? It means that if you pay an employee, say, 30,000 naira per month, the PAYE, pay as you earn tax, on 30,000 naira per month, if you are fully compliant, is about 520 naira. 50% of that is 260 naira. So the question is, where is the employer that is going to keep an employee that they would rather fire, pay them 30,000 naira per month, just to collect 260 naira back? So it doesn't add up. So this is why I do not see any single employer that is going to take advantage of that relief, even if the law had been signed as of today. So what the issues are is that when you're trying to formulate a relief for employment protection, one, you have to think about, how do I put cash in the hand of the employers almost immediately? Two, you have to think about protecting the most vulnerable employees. So the way the law is drafted now, it means that you are protecting everyone, including CEOs, including executives that are not even vulnerable, including sectors that are even doing better now during COVID period than before COVID. That is not sustainable. You should target the intervention to really address the sectors that are vulnerable, and within those sectors, the individuals at the bottom of the ladder who are most vulnerable. One, because when they lose their employment, they usually don't have savings to even sustain 2 weeks or 1 month without pay. Those are the people you need to target, and you need to ensure that the relief that is being provided is sufficient to take care of them. If you think about the second one, is on mortgage relief. Now, on the mortgage relief, the bill says that if you have a facility that you have taken from the National Housing Fund to build your home, you would enjoy a deferral of repayment for 180 days. Now, the question is, how many people have benefited from National Housing Fund? According to a report by Business Day, and towards the end of 2019, only 45,000 people in Nigeria have benefited. Now, 45,000 people compared to an active workforce of over 100 million Nigerians is even less than 0.1%. Plus, before you can be entitled to that NHF loan, you cannot be at the bottom of the ladder because there are conditions for how much you can repay back between the time you get the loan and your retirement age. So again, that does not address the issue. The fact that many countries around the world are doing mortgage deferral does not mean that is appropriate for us in Nigeria. And the third and last thing that the bill covers is the waiver of import duty on importation of equipment, material, and product that you need to take care of COVID-19. Now, say in a way that is good, but then it does not cover the specifics enough. For example, VAT on ventilators. Is there VAT on face masks? So those things were not things we had thought about before. And if you want to implement a waiver of import duty and VAT, you have to do that immediately. You don't even need an act of the parliament. You need just an order from the Ministry of Finance so that it can take effect immediately, because it's not something you can delay. By the way, the bill envisages that these waivers will take effect from 1st of March. What happens to things that have been imported now on which no waivers were granted? So I think that the National Assembly needs to work together. I do not expect them to even be on break. There's no reason why, for this reason, we cannot have both the Senate and the House of Rep in joint sittings that is done virtually to address emergency issues, working together with the executive to ensure that these measures that are being introduced indeed will make a significant impact.
Well, let me quickly take you back to the first issue you raised about job protection the other time, the job protection relief. It would seem from what you said that there is going to be massive unemployment after this COVID-19 lockdown. What can we do to bridge that from happening?
Yeah. So unfortunately, that is true. Even before COVID-19, we had very high unemployment and underemployment rates in Nigeria. It's only going to get worse, but we need to make sure that we limit the damage that is going to happen as a result of that. And there are two major considerations. One, we need to recognize that Nigeria has one of the largest percentage of informal sector of any country in the world. That's almost about 60%. So which means a lot of the employment, and there was a report a couple of months ago saying that Nigeria is number one in the world in terms of the percentage of the adult population that are entrepreneurs. But the reality is these entrepreneurs that we're talking about are subsistence entrepreneurs. They just go out to fend for themselves on a daily basis. On one hand, that's a good thing because it means that these people want to work hard if you can provide the right environment. These guys will not be covered by any palliative that you have in a stimulus bill because they're not even paying PAYE. So they're not even registered with tax authorities, paying formal taxes. So, and those are employment you also need to protect. Number two is the formal employment. For the formal employment, you have to target these by sectors. Telecommunication, for example, e-commerce, for example, those guys are generally fine at this time. Whereas if you think about airline, if you think about maritime, transportation generally, they're struggling. So you target those people, and then you can do something similar to what we have in South Africa. They have what they call employment tax incentive, and you actually collect cash from government. They used to pay this twice a year before. Because of COVID-19, they make payments every month. Because the number one problem that employers have is liquidity. We conducted a survey at PwC to over 2,500 business executives, including over 500 CEOs and business owners. and about 20% of them said they're going to lay off. And they said they can only stop the layoff if government will take care of at least 20% of the cost of the employment, not 0.1%, not 1% that is being proposed. So government has to, one, target the sectors that are vulnerable in the organized private sector, and then find a way to put money into the hand of the informal sector players. Many of them just need cash now. So these are guys who will go for trader money, farmer money. They're the ones who will go to to take loan not from the formal banking system, but from guys who charge them 5-10% per month interest rate. Those are the guys we need to take care of so that they can keep their employment. And soon after COVID-19, after the lockdown, they can get back quickly into their businesses. The unfortunate thing is, many of them, because they survive on a daily basis, are going to be spending their capital now just to survive. So which means after COVID-19 lockdown, they will struggle to get back to business as usual. So government needs to come in and help them.
Now, this stimulus package, this economic stimulus bill is an idea of the National Assembly. But we've also seen that, which of course is yet to be passed into law, signed by the president. But we've seen that the government, through the Ministry of Finance, the CBN, even the PTF, they've had, some other initiatives. Just recently, we had the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs saying that, Nigerians with 5,000 naira and below, or a history of certain amount of recharge on their phones, will get, the palliatives, relief items, basically. So we've seen the different of this, initiatives coming from here and there. And the question is, how do we harmonize it? Because if you look at the stimulus bill from the National Assembly, you would say, well, this is not enough. You have said that. If you look at what the Ministry of Finance is doing also, you probably say, well, this does not cover it all. So how do we harmonize these things? Who should be at the forefront? Who should be driving this? If the National Assembly is too slow, do we look to the federal government? How do we harmonize these things?
Yeah, so this harmonization and coordination is really important. I think what will make a difference between how well we fare during this pandemic and even post-COVID-19 will be determined by how well coordinated we are. And this coordination is not just at the federal government level. It has to be coordination also carrying along the sub-national, state, and even local governments. We have to recognize that this is not a problem of Lagos State. It's not a problem of FCT, Ogun State, or Kano. This is a national problem, which means at the national level, whether you're talking about the Ministry of Finance, whether you're talking about the Central Bank, whether you're talking about the National Assembly, whether you're talking about the presidency and the state governments, we all have to work together. Once we identify, first, you need to identify what the problems are. We should not copy and paste solutions from other countries because their dynamics are different. America wants to give money to its people. They just go through the IRS because people are registered to pay taxes. And you can use that to just easily pay money into the account. In Nigeria, majority of people are not registered to even pay taxes. So you have to think and be creative. One, work together, and this has to be coordinated by the committee established by the president that is being led by the vice president. So in many countries, you find the vice president is leading the initiative, reporting directly to the president. So they have to coordinate. Everybody needs to meet even on a daily basis. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Once you have measures you've agreed on, implement them quickly and continue to assess the impact they are making to make changes wherever it becomes necessary. I like to always say that we should not waste a crisis. We can use the opportunity of this crisis to fix so many things. For example, if we decide that we're going to use mobile phone data to identify poor people, I do not believe that BVN is going to identify the poorest people. Many of them don't have bank accounts. If you use phone data to identify the poorest based on their consumption pattern, that's consumption of data and voice, as well as how much credit they put. That one, you can use that data, harmonize it with voters register, and maybe even tax identification number. So what you need to do is give them credit. Once you've taken out the rich people based on their consumption pattern, and you've taken out minors because they are not registered with INEC for voters registration and tax authorities, the rest that you have, you can transfer credit to their mobile phone. What do you do with that? One, you promote financial inclusion and all these things that we're trying to do with mobile money. Once you get the credit on your phone, it becomes your stamp. You can use it to go and cash it out. You can use it to collect food items or whatever it is you do. And as you're doing that, you are registering all of them for tax purposes. It doesn't mean they have to pay tax, But we need to start collecting data that we can use to manage crises of this magnitude. Should this happen again, although we say God forbid in Nigeria, but nobody plans for this, we need to be prepared for the next one to be able to handle it better than this one.
As we wind down, tell us, I know you talked about in some of your recommendations that protecting businesses, supporting businesses, protecting the poor and the vulnerable, keeping jobs. What will your suggestion be about our approach to taxation? Should they do something about stamp duty collection, taxation to companies, personal income tax? What should we do in those areas?
Yeah, so unfortunately, because we are not a tax compliant culture economy, it's going to be difficult to use tax to make the impact we need now. Like I said before, the number one priority is cash in the accounts, cash in the bank, cash in your pockets. So, but even having said that, what we have to do with tax is to first identify the vulnerable people. It's good now that the Finance Act 2019 has eliminated stamp duty for transfers below 10,000. I think that is fine. Number two is you have to ensure that for the vulnerable people, you can give them rebates on PAYE. So that's also something that is being done in South Africa. You're supposed to pay PAYE of 1,000 for this period. Don't pay it because you need the money to survive. You can do that as well. Government can also look at companies in the sectors that are vulnerable. All the payment of taxes that they need to make at this time, including statutory contributions such as pension, can be deferred. You still have to pay the pension, but don't pay it now, because the more cash outflow you need to part with, the more vulnerable you become, and therefore you want to sack employees, and that creates the ripple problem.
Okay.
So overall, we can design our tax system at this time to protect the vulnerable people and make sure that people who are not vulnerable don't take advantage of this. I think it would be unethical for anyone who is not vulnerable to take advantage of this difficult time. Government needs to drive that message very clearly.
Okay, quick one before we go. There are those who suggest that, well, for instance, this pension fund, that as long as they have those funds there, they can get 1% since government hasn't captured them yet in all of this payment. Is it a good thing to do?
No, I think nobody should touch a pension fund because the money is not government money, it's individuals' money. The best you can do with pension fund is to say, if you become unemployed during this period and you can't find any other means, we can allow you access a percentage of the money you already have. It's your money, the money you have there under the pension fund account. To a certain limit, maybe 20%. So again, you can stay alive. But other than that, we shouldn't touch pension money to take care of this. It's not the business of
it's
government.
It's not touching the pension money. It is people who have those funds get 1% of the funds since those people have not been captured in the government's net or social safety net.
Yeah, if somebody has not been captured in government safety net and therefore they do not have access to palliative, but then they have a pension fund account, yes, I do agree. Allow them to access a certain percentage of the amount they have there. And that percentage should vary depending on the level of that you have. So that I would agree with. And I think the final point I want to for government to ensure that government agencies and MDAs are tax compliant. Let them pay their taxes now, and then we can have more money to manage this.
Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. We're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, yes, it's still on the front page. Yes, the federal government says if you've got more than 5,000 naira in your account, no palliatives for you. But take a look at this message coming from Henry. He's asking today, can someone ask NCDC, Federal Ministry of Health, the PTF, where the comprehensive multi-sectoral plan for COVID-19 in Nigeria is? Why has such become a secret document? Who are NCDC's partners? Where are Nigerian academics in this battle? Are we learning? He doesn't think so.
Well, going by what Professor Tomori said, hopefully we are. Here's Emeka Maduka saying, I'm glad that we will start getting weekly updates on the total number of people tested. I believe it will give us more insight on how we fared so far.
Next one is from O Olokba. saying, I have noticed a heartbreaking trend. As a senior doctor, I have not set my eyes on N95 despite high exposure risk, and I see our politicians wear it copiously on television.
Wow.
It is now a thing of fashion, and it's what we see a lot. And if as a senior doctor you say you don't have access to that, then that's a big question to ask, really.
Full second action. Is it my way? Or do we come to here now?
Okay. Well, let's look at this one then from Paul Mashote, who says, admittedly, no nation was prepared for COVID-19 outbreak, but the outbreak of the virus in Nigeria did expose the crippling state of our health centers. We need help. Don't forget that Professor Tomori was saying we're making ammunition on the war front, we're putting icing on a rotten cake. It's really very, very sad.
Well, yes, indeed. The NCD, I think the COVID-19, they did brief, I think NCDC as well, they say that they had published the statistics of those who received what from Jack Ma. So perhaps the state governors need to then explain to the people, why is it just, those are the top cadre that we see wearing the N95 masks?
Yes.
Who are the medical professionals who are wearing it? Why is that not the case? So maybe they'll respond to that as we progress, or maybe they just haven't seen it yet. Who knows? So there you go. Thank you all for watching today. We'll be back again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
I'm Ayo. Makinde, have a wonderful day and keep safe.
And I'm Maope Ogun Yusuf. Do take care.